Auto-Tune Hybrid is designed for use with Avid products, specifically Pro Tools HDX, the Carbon interface, and the Venue S6L system. And it's designed for extremely demanding work in live performance or in the studio. So HDX users and Venue users who need a DSP version that's really low latency will find Auto-Tune Hybrid indispensable. Of course, it comes in an AVOX native package, so it's compatible with native systems, but you'll really want to use the DSP system to get the most out of the plugin. First, you'll notice a tab called Advanced, and this simply allows for a more advanced control set that allows a vibrato creation and extremely advanced parameters for scale types and tracking. I'll touch on the advanced controls briefly in this tutorial, but stay tuned for another video where I'll really dive into the advanced page. For now, let's start in basic view. Input type, key, and scale are core components of every Auto-Tune version, so let's take a look at each of these controls. For input type, you'll want to match that to the type of input you have. So soprano for high females, alto and tenor for most females and some high male singers, low male for baritone voices and other low male voices, and then instruments for guitar, strings, winds, and other solo instruments. Input changes the Auto-Tune algorithm slightly to accommodate for frequency variations and slight waveform anomalies related to each input type. You might imagine that the waveform for a high tenor vocal is very different than maybe a piccolo, and correctly setting this tracking parameter will minimize errors and octave shifts as Auto-Tune tracks the signal. Next we have key, one of the 12 keys available, and scale, which offers 29 different scales to tailor the tuning algorithm to your needs. You'll want to set key and scale in Auto-Tune to match the key and the scale of your song. That way Auto-Tune knows what's out of tune. You could just set everything to chromatic and it would tune each note individually, but for best results, set it to the key and the scale of your song. Now, while we're talking about key and scale, check out our other video on Auto Key. It's a great tool to confirm or to automatically set the key and the scale of a track or phrase. Finally, if your song needs a custom scale, you can set the scale to chromatic and remove or bypass notes down in the keyboard area here to get what you need. And this can either be an on-off thing or a momentary switch. Classic mode goes back to the original Auto-Tune 5 algorithm, which was very famous for that Auto-Tune sound where the retune speed is pushed to 0, and it sounds kind of mechanical, but it's very identifiable. A lot of musicians and producers rely on that sound. And so when you turn on Classic, Flex Tune is disabled because the original algorithm didn't support it, and it doesn't support it now. Let's check it out.
Twist or turn, blame, unlearn, this not you despise.
So we've got the best of both worlds here with Auto-Tune Hybrid. With Classic mode on, we have that vintage Auto-Tune 5 mechanical sound, especially when the retune speed is at 0. And then with Classic mode off, we have a very modern, artifact-free sound, and both are completely in tune according to your settings. Detune is an adjustment you might need if your music deviates from the A440 standard. Normally, A above middle C is tuned to exactly 440 Hz, but exceptions are common, and if this is the case, simply match the detune setting to your pitch reference. This can also be changed to Sense in the Preferences panel if you wish. Tracking is perhaps the most misunderstood parameter in Auto-Tune, so let me explain. Pitch happens when a waveform repeats over and over, and this is with any sound. It can repeat for a long time or a relatively short time, and we measure these repeats with a tuner, sometimes called a frequency counter, and it helps us name these repeats as pitch. However, in music, and especially interesting music, waveforms don't repeat perfectly, and while our ears are super comfortable with minute variations in the frequency, software is not. To that end, the tracking control determines how much deviation is allowed in the repeating waveform to still be considered periodic. In most cases, tracking should be left at its default value of 50, but a noisier signal or a breathy vocal performance may require a more relaxed setting. If you're hearing artifacts such as clicks or pops, try setting the tracking to a choosier value. Retune Speed. determines how fast or how slow Autotune actually responds to an out-of-tune note. It's in milliseconds and it defaults to 20 out of the box. I've set up a quick session to demonstrate how this works with a frequency sweep, so let's check it out. So let's listen to this frequency sweep in bypass. You can hear the smoothness of the sweep. But if I engage Autotune with the stock retune speed of 20, you'll begin to hear the delineations of a major scale. Let's check it out. You can hear the scale degrees because Autotune is repitching the sweep to a major scale with 20 milliseconds between the transitions. But if I jam it up to 0, you'll hear immediate transitions. Here's another way of looking at it. In this graphic, you can see Autotune pushing that sine sweep up to the next note with a 20 millisecond delay, so there's a bit of smoothness to the correction. And then with this graphic, the retune speed is set to 0, and Autotune immediately jumps to the next scale degree, and it stays there until the sweep moves up to the next scale degree, where it jumps again, no smoothing. I like a setting somewhere between 20 and 30 milliseconds. It's perfect for most of the pop vocal work that I do. Of course, if you want the Autotune effect, just jam it up to 0 and enjoy. Now, be careful though, the retune speed can be set so slow that Autotune just won't respond at all. I mean, at 400 milliseconds, the bottom of the travel, well, that's almost half a second, and most musical phrases are over by that point. So move it up to where it's going to match your musical phrase. Again, 20, 30, maybe even 50 milliseconds is perfect for most pop vocals. Sometimes, especially with fast retune speeds, Autotune can make a long sustained note sound a little static. Humanize alleviates this problem by slightly adjusting the retune speed when it senses long sustained notes. Flex tune is a really important setting that I use to keep a vocal natural as it goes through the tuning process. Normal tuning involves drawing a middle line between half steps or scale degrees, and anything above the line gets pushed up to the next note in your scale, and anything below the line gets pushed down to the previous scale degree. And this 50-50 division or quantization works really well until the vocalist or instrumentalist starts getting expressive with halftones or scoops. For example, sometimes a bend will get tuned back up and held longer than it should, or a deep vibrato dip will get pushed to the previous scale degree when it should have been left alone. FlexTune solves this problem by creating an ignore area. Everything above the now limited area gets pushed up, and everything below gets pushed down, but the area itself is now ignored. So now, bends and deep vibratos are left alone, and only the pitches outside of the ignore area are quantized, resulting in an expressive, natural sound that's still in tune where it counts. Natural vibrato simply adds a little vibrato to the signal if you want it. The center section here displays pitch correction in cents, whether negative or positive. Let's take a moment and briefly go over Advanced View, but look for a video from us in the future where we really dive into the Advanced page in detail. When Advanced View is opened, main page controls move up and out of the way, making room for a vibrato section and an advanced custom scale area. Let's check out the vibrato section quickly. Now here's a vocal with almost no vibrato. Let's turn on a sine wave shape and listen to how Autotune uses its DSP to create a little vibrato. We have 3 controls dedicated to the onset and to the beginning of vibrato once a note starts, and 4 controls dedicated to the sound of the vibrato itself. Let's listen. The set major and set minor buttons are just quick controls to set a major or a minor scale in the custom area. It's not any different than setting a major and minor scale in the scale window, but it's included here because it can help you start a custom scale from a known position. Set all would be the equivalent of a chromatic scale, and you can edit notes accordingly. Of course, you can just bypass all and remove everything too, all just shortcuts to help you get started. And once you got a base setting, you can bypass or remove notes individually or as a group with the scale degree buttons. The MIDI section in Auto-Tune Hybrid is a great way to create custom scales on the fly, but don't think of it as some weird static thing. I mean, you could have a singer singing and literally repitch them as you go with a MIDI keyboard. So I've got this 37 key keyboard here. Let's hook it up and I'll demonstrate. First, let's create a MIDI track right up under the lead vocal here, and we'll assign the output of that to the Auto-Tune plugin in the lead vocal stack, channel 1, put it in record. Then over in Auto-Tune, we're going to hit target notes, and then every time I play a note on the MIDI keyboard, you can see Auto-Tune respond. So let's play and repitch as we go.
Twist or turn.
You can see the notes.
Blame, unlearn. This not you despise.
The last thing in advanced is targeting ignores vibrato, and it does exactly what it says. If you've got a note with too much vibrato, the targeting algorithm will ignore it and allow for good pitch correction. Auto-Tune Hybrid has a unique mix control as part of its feature set. It's like a blend control for the plugin. 0% is original source, 100% is fully processed. And if your source vocal is in tune to begin with, this control makes for great doubling effects. So that's Auto-Tune Hybrid. Thanks for checking it out.